A reflection for the fourth Sunday of Easter. On today's Gospel reading from John chapter 10, verses 1 to 10. I wonder what's the first picture that comes into your mind when you're asked to think of Jesus as being the Good Shepherd. I suspect for many of us it's the classic image found in old Sunday school books and Victorian paintings of the man with long hair and beard and a shepherd's crook, and draped across his shoulders a pretty hefty looking lamb that he's carrying gently but firmly back home. It's an image that derives less from what the Gospels say directly about Jesus than from a story that Jesus himself told. I'm sure we know the one. A shepherd counts his flock of 100 sheep, finds that one is missing, and leaving the 99, heads out in search of the stray. And the shepherd, of course, does not give up until he finds the sheep that was lost and returns with it to the fold. Alongside the parables of the lost coin and the prodigal son, the parable of the lost sheep is a story that tells of the love of God in which every individual matters, including, perhaps especially, the ones we might think of as excluded or lost. Jesus, the Good Shepherd, is the one who gathers us in and brings us safely into the fold. As we sing in The King of Love, My Shepherd Is, version of the 23rd Psalm. Perverse and foolish oft I strayed, but yet in love he sought me, and on his shoulder gently laid, and home rejoicing brought me. But vital as that truth is, there's another dimension to the idea of Jesus as Good Shepherd that today's reading from John's Gospel shows us. I was struck by what is in some ways a peculiar phrase in verse 9, where Jesus says, I am the gate. Whoever enters by me will be saved and will come in and go out and find pasture. It's that second part that we can easily miss. Come in and go out. It's all too easy to think of the work of the Good Shepherd as just being about bringing the scattered sheep safely into the pen. No, the sheep are to come in and go out and find pasture. Sheepfold is only ever a temporary measure. If they stay cooped up in that small space for any length of time, there'll be no grass left there for them to feed on. The shepherd's task is to lead the sheep into the rich, open pastures in which they can be nourished and thrive. As we hear earlier in the Gospel reading, the sheep hear his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. Out, not in. The Good Shepherd doesn't just bring back the sheep that have strayed, but sends out and leads out the flock that was gathered. And I think that tells us something important, not only about Jesus, the Good Shepherd, but also about us, the people of his pasture, the church. Ecclesia, the Greek word that is translated as church, literally means assembly, or gathering. It suggests that it's when and as we gather and meet together that we become church. The first reading from the book of Acts set for today gives a glowing, perhaps rather idealised picture of the church in its earliest days, where we're told that the first followers of Jesus spent much time together in the temple, as they devoted themselves to a community life of prayer and worship, of teaching and mutual service. Being together, learning together, praying together, these things matter. But we're living through times in which we cannot gather together in that way. And so it may be especially important to remember that other side of the truth, that the Good Shepherd does not just gather us in, but also leads us out. The church is the church, the people of God, whether we are assembled or dispersed, whether we are together in the fold, or whether we are spread out across the fields and the hillsides. Indeed, in the words of that setting of Psalm 23, whether we be by the streams of living water, or in the verdant pastures, or even when we find ourselves in death's dark vale, Jesus, the Good Shepherd, is always with us, will care for us, and will ultimately bring us home.